Shame!
Hopefully, with just the few years I have on you guys, I can impart to you some of what helped me in keeping my faith through this journey and what I think can help you guys hold very tightly to your most important asset, your inheritance, which is your Catholic faith. So I had this whole speech planned, and then I was saying a rosary as I got off my airplane, and something occurred to me that I needed to say. And I was trying to figure out, how do I work this in? And I was like happy that I got the insight, but I was scrambling to figure out how to squeeze it in here. But what occurred to me was that often when people ask me or ask other people who are Catholic, who have gone through these institutions that aren't friendly to us or our faith, when they ask them, how do you survive as a Catholic? How can I survive in my workplace or my school as a Catholic? What they're asking is, how do I get away with being Catholic? How can I be Catholic and go unnoticed? How do I keep my head down? And what occurred to me was that the only way we can keep our faith is really by giving it away, because it's a gift, and God rewards generosity. He does not reward stinginess. So often we think, I'm going to keep my faith for myself. I'm not going to share it with the people around me because they won't understand it or they'll even hate me for it. And so we keep it all bottled up inside instead of trying to share it. And then there are people around us who could have had an encounter with the truth, but we deprived them of that because we were the person God put in that situation to impart some truth or wisdom or knowledge to them, but we didn't because we were afraid. So if you want to find any kind of motivation for keeping your faith, if you want to find any kind of motivation just for evangelizing, spreading the truth to those around you, look at the culture that you're living in. I'm sure all of you have, and that's why you're here and not out there. What does this culture tell us? That man is an ape who's incapable of restraining his sexual desires, and the best thing a man can do with his life is become as wealthy as possible so he can have as many consequence-free sexual interactions with women who he will then discard and never love and never be loved by. And then it tells the men who don't want to or can't attain that level of status that they're incels, they should spend the rest of their life alone, anesthetizing themselves with pornography. It tells young women to allow themselves to be used, that they are sexual objects, that they should never be loved, and they grow up living in this culture where they become bitter because no man has ever been honest with them. He's only tried to flatter them if he thought he could have sex with them, and then mocked them when he found out he couldn't. This is a culture where sexually confused people are mutilating their bodies into completely unrecognizable disrepair and speeding towards early graves because of drug overdose and suicide, where mothers are ending the lives of their own unborn children. And the cause of all of these deaths is one word that embodies, and that this culture embodies, and that is despair. This is a culture of despair. And you are young people, and you have hope, and that's good, and you need to hold on to it. To see all of these horrible, disgusting things going on in the world and ask, how do I get away with being Catholic? How do I keep my faith? How do you spread your faith? How do you spread your faith to these people? They need you. They need the truth. Don't look at a world that's acting as ugly as ours is and think so low of yourself that you would ask, how can I fit in? You're not meant to fit in. You're not meant to fit in with that, and you should be glad. Christ told you that the world is going to hate you. No servant is better than their master, and look what the world did to him. What you're going to realize, especially as you start to get a little bit older, is that many of the people you look at with anger or maybe contempt are people you should really be feeling sorry for. Because even though in some sense they're enemies, they're really prisoners. They're prisoners of untruth. And you have the truth, and you can share that with them and help to set them free. They have to make the decision for themselves ultimately. But imagine you're in some kind of prison camp and there's a narrow gate that people can squeeze through. Do you not tell them because some of them are in love with their chains? You'd be honest with them, I hope. So what are we afraid is going to happen if we voice our faith? We're going to be screamed at, yelled at. You know, that's sort of the worst case scenario. Maybe lose our career. Maybe people who otherwise might have worked with us, might have liked us, might have been able to do worldly things for us, isn't going to want to. That's one thing that could happen. Certainly. People could simply not like you. That's very real. It's a normal, healthy human instinct to want to fit in some sense. We're social creatures. The fact that we're social creatures isn't bad. When we put a desire to fit in above the truth, of course, that is bad, and you all know that. But whatever these things are, whether it's a fear that you're going to be shouted out of the room, whether you're going to lose the argument and be embarrassed or feel you have been made to look stupid, whether it is just not being liked, whatever it is, okay? Firstly, those are not the only possible outcomes. Very often, surprisingly often, to be honest, I found as I was completing my degree at an art school where people were very left-leaning, on an individual basis, people were much more open to truth than I suspected that they would be. And that's part of why I was so happy that I started to speak out about these things and talk with my fellow students about them. Because one thing I've learned is that there aren't so many left-wing people as there are left-wing groups. When you get a lot of left-wing people alone, I'm not sure if they're more agreeable in their temperament, and so they're just willing to go along with what you say the way they're willing to go along with whatever the mob is saying at that moment. But I have found people are much more receptive to the truth than we give them credit for. And then, again, in the worst case scenario, let's say these things do happen. You are rejected. You do end up feeling unloved. Your career is damaged. Well, you suffered all of that for Christ.